Welcome. Woo! Welcome back. It is day 3 of day 4 actually, because it started on Sunday, of National Arts and Education Week. We are celebrating our Maryland arts educators. My name is Quanice Floyd. I'm the Executive Director of Arts Education in Maryland Schools. And we have with me
Alicia Lee, Maryland State Department of Education.
Woo!
Proud flag wearer.
Yes, Maryland. Show that Marylanders love the Maryland flag. Whoop whoop. So just to give you a context of why we're doing what we're doing this week, this is National Arts and Education Week, which was passed by Congress in 2010 for House Resolution 275, which designates the second Sunday in September as the National Arts and Ed Week. So during this week, the field of arts education joins together in communities across the country to tell the story of the impact of the transformational power of arts and education. This year, AEMS is celebrating our educators, and we're going to do that every year, every day, every hour, every month, all of that. We always want to celebrate and send love to our educators. So follow along with us this week as we continue to interview amazing arts educators from around the state. Today, we're interviewing music educators. Whoop, whoop, music. We have 3 phenomenal music educators here with us today. If you all could introduce yourselves and let us know where you teach, what county, and what grade levels. And Krystal, you can go first.
Hello, my name is Krystal Williams, and I am the instrumental music teacher at Western High School, which is in Baltimore City Public Schools. I've been teaching there for 14 years. I am happy and I love my lovely Doveleys because it is the nation's oldest all-girl public high school.
And Jen, let's learn about you.
Hi, I'm Jen Retterer. I teach for Howard County Public Schools. I teach at Lake Elkhorn Middle School in Columbia. I am the orchestra teacher and one of the general music teachers as well.
Awesome. And last but not least, MeLinda Ford.
Hello, everyone. I am MeLinda Ford. I teach instrumental music for Montgomery County Public Schools. I am on the elementary level. And I am so happy to be in the number. I am in the number.
Yes, I feel a song coming on. That was wonderful to hear you guys all over, really representing, all across the state, music educators. And we at the State Department of Education, we join in celebrating the work that you all do, and of course the work of all Maryland music educators, all national educators, but Maryland first. Yes, we celebrate you, and we're so thrilled to have you here. Will you give us, just define your work in one sentence? So let's start with Krystal, and then Krystal, just pass it to the next person. Define what you do, and what would you call it? What do you do? How do you define your work?
I love it when people have that post of describe your job without describing your job. So what I do is I empower young ladies to be the best version of themselves through music.
Thank you, Krystal. Will you pass it to the next?
Passing it to Jen.
Hey, so I like to think of my job as sort of a musical outreach kind of job, where I am not necessarily always creating musicians that go on to become musicians in the future, but to practicing musicians, but to inspire future music lovers who are people who go on and really have that deep appreciation for music holistically. You're up, MeLinda.
I like to think of myself as a Professor Xavier. I like to give, while teaching music and while students are interested in taking instruments, one thing I like to point out is you have a superpower. Let's get that superpower labeled so you know the way you learn and what your personality traits are, so we can bring the best out of you.
That is so terrific. I'm hearing from all 3 of you this common thread of future orientation. right? You guys are teaching elementary, middle school, and high school kids, but you're looking towards the future with them. You're looking for them towards the future for them as consumers, right? And as music makers, as adults. Krystal is talking about empowering them for a future, right? Whatever their potential may be, giving them that power that will last, and then ending with superpowers, right? And so the personalization that all of you are talking about in terms of getting to know your students, it sounds like, and going beyond the music making as a tool for engagement and building relationships, that is so present already in the conversation, which is really exciting. So will you tell us, why did you become a music educator? What drove you to become a music educator? How did you get on this path? Who would like to share?
I'll go first.
Awesome.
It was through tragic events that I started music. I was always a music lover as a child, but I went inward, and my mother, being my mother, she was like, look, I can't afford for you to implode. So she always knew I was a music lover. I was that kid that was singing on Sunday mornings with the brush, to all the songs and stuff. And so she said,
like
hey,
5 heartbeats. Isn't that what that
right.
is?
Very much so. So she says to me, I can't afford for you to play an instrument, but I cannot afford for you not to. So that was really impactful. And so I started my band journey, and I realized that it was very therapeutic.
What did she mean by that?
Okay, I'm going to say it because I didn't have I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth, and I would not change my life and what I've been through for anything. But my parents divorced. My dad had addiction issues, and that's traumatic to a child. And so with me being the oldest, I imploded. And so she was saying, I can't afford for you not to take an instrument because she can't afford to lose her child. But at the same time, being a single parent with 3 children, she couldn't afford the instrument, but she was bound and determined that I was going to play.
How did she know that an instrument would give you something that you needed besides learning how to play scales?
Well, I'm gonna say this. My mother is now a pastor. Okay, so she was always mamas just know you. I'm gonna say it like that. I can tell what it is now that I'm a mother, but then I couldn't. I'm like, can you stop using that superpower to tell me what I just did, or tell me if I told the truth or not? But she was adamant. She picked what we would do. My sister is a public speaker. My brother is an entrepreneur. All of us are entrepreneurs as well. But she was like, I can't afford for you not to do this. So that started the journey. And as I went on, I didn't see very many people that looked like me. I didn't see in the area that I was from women music educators, let alone female musicians, other than the piano players in my local church, if I'm gonna be honest. And so I'm sorry about that. My mother said, you're just gonna keep going. That's right, life, ain't it?
Yeah, that's right. We're all at home. You're at home. We're coming into your home. So
and that was life. So 2 weeks after I started playing, she sat me down in church. She said, you can't get up until you graduate high school, and you're not quitting either. And you didn't tell my mother no. That's all I gotta say about that.
I like that. Sounds like a good mama. That's right, a great mama. Thank you so much. Who else has a story to share about how they became an art educator? How did you get in there, Jen?
So I grew up in Montgomery County, actually. So I grew up in Maryland, went to Montgomery County schools. I went to Francis Scott Key Middle School, and and I had an amazing orchestra teacher there, Mr. James Walters, and he was really inspiring. And I always noted, even when I was a kid, how he would go the extra mile past, like he wasn't just our teacher, he was someone who would definitely show up for our solo and ensemble. And when I was, when I didn't do so great at my solo and I was crying outside the door, he was there sitting with me, and I think that for a kid, that makes a really huge impact on you. And, we talk about the importance of relationship building, and especially, definitely now we need that a lot now that we're kind of separated from each other. But back then it had an impact on me, and it lasted forever, you know, and that inspired me to become a teacher. And I knew from a pretty young age, I knew by high school already, definitely early high school, that I was going to become a music teacher as well.
Already by high school, you were prepared on that educator track. That's amazing. Krystal, what about you? What's your journey been like to become?
Oh man, I'm gonna date myself. I know I look so fabulously young. I'm gonna receive it too.
Yeah.
My first day of kindergarten, watching Peter and the Wolf on those old film strips with the little, the little boop. And I fell in love with the orchestra. And that same year we went to see Dreamgirls. I know, so appropriate for kindergarten. But we saw Dreamgirls. And yes, it was a class trip. And we saw Dreamgirls. And I remember, okay, all the singing on stage is lovely, but what's happening down there? And I peeked over and I saw the pit and I said, they have the cool job. Like, why are they down there? And they were playing instruments. And I was captured. And so my cousins, I have a lot of cousins who did like band, and they were much older than me. And I would kind of like idolize after them and like look at them playing instruments. And I was like, oh, I just have to learn how to do this. And then, kind of tragedy struck. And my mother, we had some hard times, and I was homeless for a while. And my mother, she died from complications of the AIDS virus in the early 90s. Wow. And that was the same year that, they come around to your classroom and say, would you like to be in band? And I had nothing kind of like keeping me or holding me together. And so I kind of immersed myself into band, and I learned how to play instruments. And then, everyone has that iconic music teacher that kind of just opens that world. And mine was Roosevelt Pratt. And he had to be very young. He's down in E.E. Smith in North Carolina. And just the energy he brought to class, and he would take us to trips, and we would see like the HBCU bands play. And I was like, this is it. I can actually do this for a living. Like, why would you not want to do this for a living? Like, this is not really teaching. This is something else. I know better now, but I know better now. It's still teaching. It's still teaching. It's actually teaching plus.
Yes.
But I just it was that world. And my mother was musical, and she played albums when we cleaned up. You had to clean up on Saturday, and you had to listen to whatever she listened to. And I got an appreciation from like the, Earth, Wind and Fire. And those were my favorite bands as a kid, 20 years, before my time. But I was like, oh, this is where it's at. And there's still like the music, or like I call the soundtrack of me. That's like what drives me in the classroom. And I kind of force those things on my students, and they like Earth, Wind and Fire too. But I kind of immerse myself into their world a little bit. And it just kind of keeps that cycle going. It was my safe place. Just to be honest, it was my safe place.
These are incredible stories of triumph. Incredible stories of adults, standing in the way and proxy with you as young people and guiding you towards a musical path. And I see through the work you're doing how you guys are doing that for your students. And that is very powerful, that reciprocation, how that journey continues. You are standing as those powerful forces for kids. Taking it over.
So Krystal, you mentioned a teacher who inspired you. So I'm wondering, Jen and MeLinda, was there a teacher in your lives that inspired you to go into arts education as well?
Yeah, I definitely had the one in middle school, that Mr. Walters, who was one of my main inspirations. Just the fact that he would take the time to build relationships with kids, and it had a really lasting impact.
I love that image of you, not of you crying. I don't like to hear that. I love the image of a teacher. I'm assuming solo and band ensemble was not during school time. Right?
No,
right.
It was not.
Right. So a teacher who has their own life and other things they're doing, but this career is not a career. It's really a calling, right? Being a teacher. And so, you don't see executives on Wall Street coming in on Saturday to inspire people, right? But we see teachers doing that all the time, and especially arts educators, spending evenings and weekends saying, look, we got, pile all the kids in the van. We got to go over to the school. And because Jen is going to play solo ensemble today, and we got to be there to support her when she comes off stage, like, that power and seeing how that legacy continues for all of us. All right, MeLinda, let's hear about your teacher inspiration.
I actually had two. My middle school band director in the state of Virginia at that time, you started playing in the 5th grade. So I had a band director named Charles Butler, who had a funk band on the weekends. And he would come back on Monday morning telling us about he had opened for whomever down at the Greensboro Coliseum. Or he would say he wore shirt and tie, look real prim and proper Monday through Thursday. But Friday, he looked like Mr. T in his fatigues. He was like, look, y'all, we gonna do what we gotta do. I gotta go down here to Greensboro Coliseum and get this money. That's what he would say. Or Michael Hairston, who's still my mentor today. Both came out of North Carolina A&T to a small town in Martinsville, Virginia, and they brought that A&T swag with them. So, but Michael Hairston was my junior high teacher, and he was a quintessential jazz man, very much that Mo Better blues kind of thing. And he would come back after playing at the Greensboro Coliseum and tell us about how he played behind Stevie Wonder or Aretha Franklin. And I'm like, I want to do that. I want to do that. So I came up with music educators that were who they said they were. When they were driving you to do what they needed you to do and learn what you needed to learn, it was electrifying to watch those two men do what they did. And you knew that when that school day ended, they were going to their next gig. They were going to get that gig, and I was like, this is wonderful. And that's what I wanted to do. And both of them got on me. They were like, look, you stand 5'2", don't play. You better get your stuff together if you want to do this job, because people gonna doubt you, often. And at the time, when I was young and I was just starting out, it really came and it hit hard. And if it weren't for those two men instilling a level of confidence that I couldn't have gotten anywhere else, I don't know what I would have done. And still to this day, call Mike Hairston. Okay, he retired out of Fairfax County. He's now at the NEA. And I'm like, look, man, what do you think I should do about this? Because you always have to have someone to bounce ideas off of who's lived it.
Absolutely. I love this idea of all these strong female band directors that we have in Maryland. That leaves, just a whole new legacy for the next generation of students, seeing that as a norm much more often than I think we see in some other places. Amazing. Legacy, the power of legacy and the power of how it continues for all of us. Yep. So what do we want to dig into next?
Yeah, let's dig into the current situation. So we know that there's a lot going on in the world. You are, as teachers and educators, you're dealing with a lot right now. So what does your virtual classroom experience look like? What does it feel like? How are your students, learning in that type of environment? We'll start with Jen, and then you could pass it on.
So it is, it's an adjustment for everyone. So that's important to always remember. I think that we have to approach everything that we do in virtual learning with a lot of grace. That's a word that we use a lot, because there's a learning curve for everything. I think that a lot of us feel pretty comfortable doing our jobs. I'm 13 years in my career, and I feel like a new teacher this year in a lot of ways. And I think a lot of us are feeling that way because there's just a lot of new things that we have to kind of develop and figure out how to make into what we want them to be, that so they can be engaging for kids in a way that we're not quite used to. So like for me with a performing arts class, I teach orchestra and I'm used to having kids in front of me. I'm used to having that ensemble. I'm used to being able to go up to a kid and, actually fix their hand position if something is wrong, right? But I can't reach through the screen. I wish I could, because that would be really helpful. But we're also having, I think, an opportunity now to do a lot of important things that maybe sometimes we end up overlooking during the year, not on purpose, but because our performing arts classes are so performance based and focused, sometimes we feel like we have to kind of neglect the other things that we can talk about, like history and theory and creativity through composition, improvisation, all of these things that we have. Now we have kind of the ability to take a step back and say, wait a second, I have all these really cool online platforms that I can use now to sort of delve in deeper with my kids with these sorts of things. So I can take time to have my kids analyze more music and listen and go into, you know, a DAW and digital audio workstation and compose something or do their playing test online. So we can, you know, we have this kind of unique opportunity now, but there is that learning curve with it. And the kids kind of need to take that too. So to go back to what we're sort of experiencing in the classroom, I feel like we have to take everything kind of one step at a time and slowly. And I use my meditation voice a lot with my kids, like, it's okay, guys, we're all gonna be fine. It's gonna be okay, we're doing this together. And that's usually how we get through a class. But, you know, I think they're really happy to be in there and getting the chance to still practice their art. I'm gonna pass it on to Krystal.
Yes, let's hear from Krystal.
And Jen, you're saying a lot of important stuff about that, that depth. There's like, I have a program that, you know, we hit the ground running. I start beginners and no one cares. And I always tell them, no one cares that you just started playing last week. When they see you with an instrument, they make an assumption you can play that instrument. And so we just kind of dive and we start driving forward. And sometimes we do miss some of those key skills, and we do have to kind of push past, you know, okay, I know you're figuring it out. We keep making this analogy about building the plane while it's in flight. And that's what this whole season is about. But realizing while you're building that plane, you can ask people to hand you parts. And that's what I'm learning as an instructor, is that I'm used to pushing forward by myself and kind of not recognizing there are other people flying planes too. And some people have figured out how to fly a plane with only one wing, and they've been doing it for a long time. And so I'm just kind of, the relationships I'm building outward to my colleagues, because everybody's a professional in their own right and have information and skills and soaking that in. And that being transparent with my students, that I don't know everything. I have to ask for help. And that's a teachable moment in itself, especially for my young ladies, is that sometimes it's okay to ask for help. Like, it's okay to learn from someone else and build on that knowledge. And I'm enjoying the ride, actually. A lot of people, there's a lot of negative energy. And of course, we all want to be face to face. Like, I miss my students. I saw them today giving out instruments, and they just kind of hung outside the door of the school talking because they miss that camaraderie. And so, no, nothing can replace that. But what I've been trying to do is let me be the person that, at least if I have to build a plane, let me be the best plane builder, and let me know all the tech and let me learn ahead of them so I can help navigate. And they can trust that, and they can feel comfortable that Mrs. Williams is really working hard to make sure that this is comfortable, even from my background. Like, I'm trying to immerse them into a world that may be different from what they're dealing with at home. And that was what band was for me. So even in this virtual setting, especially in this virtual setting, I'm like, okay, you can ignore the construction outside your home. You can ignore 5 kids running around, shutting your laptop. Come inside and come into this world with me, because that's what my band directors and my mentors did for me. And I still take those moments and I go learn from my mentors. You're never too old. And just kind of being a model of that for my students, that vulnerability that we normally can't be. You know, we have to always test data and, you know, the performance, but now we can just kind of breathe and say, let's just enjoy that we're still in the plane and it's flying somewhere.
I guess that's my turn there. Oh, wow. I appreciate you stating that vulnerable piece, because as music educators, we're driven to keep performing until we fall out. You better get that performance piece done, and then you can fall out backstage. And that's so, right. You know, you used to driving, I call it bulldozer mentality. you just drive and drive. And so now we're driving blindly to a degree. And recently in Montgomery County, we got a new music supervisor. And I have enjoyed his refreshing approach. This is just different from our prior supervisor, in that he has had forums every week for music educators on each level to come and just talk, not only to vent, but to share. And it has been eye-opening. I've been in the county 20 years. I've been teaching 25 years, and I have enjoyed, I'm like, oh, I ain't the only one stressing out. Okay, there's nothing wrong with me personally. This is the job, you know, and I've thoroughly enjoyed that. On the elementary level, we are in PR and administrative mode, but in Montgomery County, we're not quite up and running yet. So, you know, I'm at, okay, let's get, you know, stuff up on the school's website. Let's get stuff up in Canvas. So teachers don't have to actually manage that every time I change something. Oh, you know what? Let me talk to these administrators and get permission to come in and do X, Y, Z. Oh, by the way, you know, I need to set up instrument distribution. And so we're all doing that while we're doing registration. Whereas we would be in talking to students, getting understanding of their learning styles, of their personality traits, and of their physical makeup, because that does have to do with, you know, what instrument you want. And I do tell them that, you know, as far as jawline instruction, playing woodwind instruments and brass instruments, and you know, we would normally be sizing the arms for string instruments and things of that nature. And so, you know, that's not there, but I am grateful for the opportunity to get to know my fellow music educators, not only in the county that I teach in, that I have only seen in, you know, county meetings once or twice a year, that I'm seeing every week now, that I have picked up the phone and say, okay, are you doing this way? That has been transformative for me as a musician and as a music educator. And so, you know, I'm at the front of the plane. I haven't even gotten off the runway yet, but we're going to get off the runway soon.
I love to hear that, because, you know, as musicians, we are collaborators. I always tell people, I don't know any other way to do it other than collaboratively. I don't know how to do it on my own. We don't work in silos. We work across. I don't know any other way to do it, because I'm a musician. That's the way we work. So I love hearing that. Even now, you're seeing that strength of more collegiality, more collaboration with your colleagues across buildings, because you're digital. So there's more space and opportunity for us to connect, because we need that connection. I think this is a good time for me to plug our professional learning from MSDE that's coming up. So I think we're going to drop a link in the chat on Facebook, but we have over 100 hours of professional learning coming up this fall from September to December, but specifically, we've got some professional learning looking at digital engagement and performance. So if you are new to digital performance, and when you pick up your phone, you don't even know how to get the videos off of your phone, we have a beginner's class, audio and video, all the way up to, if you've been when Jen said DAW, if you knew what she meant, then you can come to the advanced class. If you don't know, you cannot come and learn how to elevate your those, you know, Logic Pro and Finale, all of those virtual performances that are bringing audio and video together. If you want to learn how to elevate them past, you know, something very basic, we have that class too. So dance for the camera, lots of different options, but lots of things for music teachers, so that we can elevate as a state. We can make sure that we are giving you some tools to elevate your students' work during this time when we know so much of the work will continue, especially performances, will continue to be virtual, even when schools go back in person. This seems like a good time to switch over to Juanice. Do we want to hear about, what do you think we want to hear about next?
Yeah, I mean, one of the common themes that I'm hearing from everyone is the fact that there's humanness in being open, right? Like you all are in the middle of this is like the first time this has ever happened in our lifetime, right? Like something like this, where you're dealing with systemic racism, you're dealing with COVID-19, you can't go outside, gotta wear a mask, right? This is something we've never experienced before. And as educators, you know, we're lifelong learners. And so we're learning, just like you all said, we're building the plane in the air with one wing. Maybe sometimes we run out of gas. Maybe sometimes, we don't have, it's raining, it's a hailstorm, right? And so just thinking about all of that, sometimes we often forget that we're human, right? Teachers are human. We have a family, we have lives. And so other people forget that too. And as we can see from a lot of the things that's happening on television, on the news. So just to think about like support, right? Like how can we still do what we need to do as educators, but then also get folks to better understand that we're human. And so just kind of wrapping that around, but what is the type of support that you all might need to sustain your humanness as a music educator, right? Like, what do you need from parents, or what would you need from your school's admin or your school's central office? What is something that you would need right now during this time to help support so that you can continue to provide that amazing education to your students?
What a great question, Carlos.
I like the fact that we were in a meeting Monday evening, and I have a 7-year-old, and her office, not her desk, but her office is 2 feet from mine. And she'll pop in, she's like, "Mommy, this has happened. Fix it now." And I'm like, "Excuse me, let me go over here and help my 7-year-old," because, my number one priority is that of a mother. But, I'm prioritized as a teacher too. So sometimes they conflict, in years past, take your kid to work. I'm like, "Look, go to school. You got 3 instruments to learn. Don't go down the hallway and mess with the art teacher, stay here with me." But now, I work not only to train my replacement in music education eventually, but I am working so that my child can possibly be whatever she wants to be, whether it's in education or music or whatever. So, when you hear people say, "Get up from that workstation and walk away," because truth be told, it takes more than the 6.5 hours, the 8 hours, sometimes 10, 12, 14, the weekend, while you in the car, but, while your spouse or significant other is driving, you texting, you emailing to say, walk away. Because a lot of times what ends up happening, we don't establish boundaries so that we can replenish our energy and our spirituality and establish healthy relationships for us. So to have people say that means a lot. Or, "Melinda, don't worry about that. We know you have a daughter. They're just now seeing her. The rest of my colleagues are seeing her, for the first time because she's there." Or the phone will ring. What can you do?
We're coming into your house, Melinda. So if your phone rings at your house, that's fine with us. We're visiting you. So we're grateful for the invitation.
Yeah, I'm gonna kind of piggyback on that too. I have a 6-year-old and a 10-year-old, and they're both home. And my husband's also a teacher, so we're all 4 of us are doing this all at once. And I think there has been, at least for me, this sort of difficulty of detaching work from home, because work is at home right now. So you have to kind of take those moments where you can leave the house, maybe take a walk. That's helpful, because if you can remove yourself from the situation, it helps a lot too. I think, as far as support from parents, I think if parents can sort of understand that we are also learning what we're doing right now, and that we're working really hard to get this correct, but we might not always have it perfect. And I think for the most part, the majority of parents that I have talked to have been aware of that, and they have been super supportive, and that's really awesome. But there does need to be kind of this awareness that everything that we are doing takes a little bit more time. And by a little bit, I mean a whole lot of more time than we've been used to having it take when we're creating this content to put online. And then I also want to say that I think this is a really good moment to say that we also need support from our lawmakers to veto the blueprint for Maryland's future, to overturn that veto, because we need that. So we need to make sure that our lawmakers are listening to that one as well. Just want to throw that out there.
And I'm gonna talk about or tie into, at least attempt to, I'm gonna bring back that superhero narrative, especially with women, is that there's this burden of having to do everything right now. So having to do everything right now. And that it's okay to fail. It's okay to, start dinner late. And like my son, he Zoom bombs, and I used to kind of be like apologetic, and now I just kind of welcome him in. I'm like, oh, come on, Matthew. Hey, everybody say hi to Matthew. This is my son. He's right next door in his little, it used to be the game room, and thank God my son is being responsible and not playing video games while online, but that's being a real mother. Like, that's real. We're real, we're not just mothers, but we're human beings behind the screen. And that this is taxing on all parties. Like, it's taxing on parents, administrators, teachers, and being able to be okay with saying that. Because I used to think that I had to have all the answers. And that would make me look like not a strong teacher, but it actually makes me a really strong teacher to say, hey, I just learned this technology last night. And so it's failing, and I have no idea why it's failing. But guess what? We're going to mess up together. So I'm going to stay in the plane. You stay in the plane with me. We're going to fly together. I don't know, maybe you have to put your arm out here, and maybe you'll read something and send me information. And on the state level, kind of with the music tech chair, people send me emails and say, hey, I found this. And I'm like, oh, great. Let me see how that works. Back to that collaboration, because we've worn this cape, and teachers, this is to a fault sometimes. We worn this cape, and this cape is made of lead. And we think that there's something wrong with us for not being able to lift the cape off the ground all the time. There's nothing wrong with being a human being and having these superhero properties, but at the end of the day, the cape has to come off. And once that cape goes off, you're home with family, and you have to kind of look at them, and they don't see a superhero, they see you as a human being. And trying to be transparent with the rest of the world that there are human beings on the other side of the screen that are trying to navigate this world that has never happened before. There's no answer. I tell parents all the time, out of all my 3 degrees, not one of them are helping me right now. This is all just a desire to not fail and to want to succeed for your students. So if you join me, we can probably have a better chance succeeding together than, everybody kind of pointing fingers across the board from teachers. Like, if you just kind of get on the plane with me, and back to that passing parts, if you just hand me something, then I can help navigate this a little better. And I might have to hand you something too. I might have to say, hey, Miss So-and-so, Mr. So-and-so, I'm gonna give them extra time to do their work because I know the technology failed. And that's not on either of our part. But just bear with me. I can't grade papers all weekend. There are other human beings in my house with me. There are other human beings on the plane that you may not see, but they exist. And just being transparent, and it's okay to be transparent, because nobody's a superhero here. We're all just people trying to fly the plane together.
That's fantastic. I don't necessarily believe in silver linings, but I do believe in lessons to learn from hardship. And, I'm hearing you guys talk about what you're seeing in your classroom with your students and what you need and what you already have and want more of. And it seems like we're all learning a lot about empathy. We're all learning, of course, about the value of the arts. I mean, what would this pandemic be without Netflix? I shudder to think about that. And we're all learning too about the value of teachers. So many parents, even though we do see, some negative things in the press, we see parents overwhelmingly sharing gratitude. They see how much work is going into what's happening, and what they see is half of what's actually occurring, right? What they're noticing as high level of preparation, they're not understanding how many hours it took to get there, to learn a new technology, to learn a new platform, to get this, to do that. So they're seeing some of it and they're grateful. I've never seen, we celebrate teachers all, that's how we all are over here. But I don't normally see on Facebook almost every parent that I know writing a message just saying, I can't tell you how grateful I am to my school. I can't tell you how grateful I am to the teachers, you know? So that is a real plus. And so I'm hoping that will help us all to listen to you more as a society, to listen to you, the teachers, the people who are at that intersection between school and family, as we make decisions about schools, that will listen to teachers and students, of course.
Right. Yeah. And Jen brought up a really great point about the blueprint. And so AEMS is a partner of the Blueprint Coalition. So I'm just doing a little plug here. There's an event on September 24th. Rachel McGrain put it in the chat. So if you all are in Maryland and are interested, it's a virtual event. So you all can learn more about what's going on with the Blueprint bill. But just to piggyback off of Jen mentioning that, Krystal and MeLinda, if you had a lawmaker in front of you right now, what would you ask them for? What would you say to them?
I would say that the same things that are appropriate and good enough for your family should be appropriate and good enough for every family. So if at any point, if you ask the same question to yourself, is this something that would be fitting into the benefit of the human beings in my house? If the answer is no, then you have to say no, because you would never negotiate with your loved ones. And so as something that I've learned over time, like even asking my students to do something, if it's something that I would ask my students to do and I won't do it, or I wouldn't do it, or that I wouldn't want my friends to do it, then that means without negotiation, the answer is no. It's either black or white. And I think in politics, especially current politics, there's a lot of gray, that we kind of put this gray area, but the gray area only exists for certain people. But when it's your house, it's either black or white. It's either yes or no. And so I would say to anybody in politics, if the answer is no, this is not what's best for my own, the people that I love and care about, then that answer has to be reciprocated to someone else's family, even if it's just one family or one person.
That's a powerful statement right there. Equitable practices, equitable policies, equitable healthcare, equitable education. You know, when you talk about making decisions that is going to affect someone's life for the rest of their life, you know, you really have to consider, like Krystal said, you know, is this going to work in your own home? Would you do this to your own family? And if you don't, or if you have to question that, then maybe you should reconsider. We are human beings as educators. We teach human beings, our students, we love them and we care for them. And when they go home, we want them to be safe. We want them to be fed. We want them to have health care. We want them to have the books, the papers, the pencils, the computers that they need to get the job done. Because when I get old, I'm going to come to one of my students, whether they'll be a doctor, a lawyer, a teacher, a police officer, whomever. And I want them to have had the best education, the best healthcare, the best food, a safe environment so that they can flourish. Because it's going to help all of us that our students flourish. If they don't flourish and they don't do well, what's going to happen? And you can't close the door and say, okay, you know, that exists somewhere else other than my house. Because if it affects one of us, it's going to affect all of us. Isn't that, you know, this whole thing behind this pandemic and, you know, and just wearing a mask. You wear your mask to take care of you, but you wear your mask to take care of me. And, you know, we come into the virtual classroom, the virtual platform to help. We're still here saying we're still in this battle with you. You know, we don't want you to give up while we're trying to be safe. So, you know, consider if you have to think twice about what you're getting ready to pass, and it, like Krystal said, if it doesn't work in your home, then don't experiment it. Don't experiment on other people. Just saying.
And I also want to throw out there, we hear a lot of people say things like schools aren't open or schools are closed. Schools are absolutely open right now. They're just open online. And, we're working really hard to have them open and be able to give these opportunities to kids while keeping them safe. And that's, I think a huge priority for teachers who really care about our kids,
That's awesome. Like I'm literally in awe because what you all said is so powerful. It's really, really amazing. And you all brought up something just throughout the different questions that we've had about the future, right? And so I'm thinking now on behalf of the students who are currently in undergrad as a music education major at some institution, maybe in Maryland, maybe not, who is really excited about wanting to be a public school music teacher. And so if you had any advice for that undergraduate student who is getting ready to graduate, or in 2 years or 3 years, what would you share with them?
My advice would be for teachers, remember why it should always be your first love. I think about, I celebrated my 13th anniversary. And I've been with my husband for 20 years, uninterrupted this year, 20 years. And
I'm gonna have to snap out loud for that. A long time.
I remembered this year why he's my first love. And teaching has that moment, and you have to find that moment that made teaching your first love. And most of the time, it's not even when you were teaching, it's actually when you were still the student. And remember those moments that you still look at it, you smile, and you think about how that teacher made you feel. And then you reciprocate that to your students. And so when you're trying to find ways through the difficult times and how to stay a teacher and stay on the path of all of the changes that happen and all the policies, just remember that first moment where you fell in love with it, and hold on to that for dear life, because it will help you get through the most difficult times, especially times as such as this, where there is a lot of uncertainty, but you will always be certain about that feeling. And that's my advice to teachers.
I was told when I left undergraduate school, you are not any good as a music educator if you're not still a musician. You're no good as a music educator if you're not forever a student. And music is transformative by itself, just by itself. And as we evolve as people, our music evolves. And so I remember coming into all of the music buildings I've ever been in, whether it's middle school, junior high, high school, college, or graduate level, and you could still hear the music teachers playing. So for me as a music educator, one, keep your instrument always with you. It will be your psychiatrist when you need one. It will be your therapeutic healing tool. Number two, always be forever a student. Sit at the feet of someone whose program you want to emulate. Pick up the phone. Don't let your ego get in the way of, because it does sometimes get in the way and say, hey, Miss such and such, Mr. such and such, I like what you're doing. Can I come and talk to you? Or, can I come? I had a fellow music educator. She's actually a general music teacher. And I said, I had to do a general music stint once at a school. And I'm like, it's been a while since I've done that side of things. I called the lady, I said, look, how about this? I'll bring lunch. Can I come to your house? And she's retired. Can I come to your house and ask you what you did to make your program so successful, I'll bring lunch. You know, and she's still a dear friend to this day. Forming relationships with people that you can depend on, as well as always having your instrument, will definitely ensure that you will continue to have a love. Because sometimes the job can get a little tough, and sometimes you can get a little salty behind, hey, you know, I'm a human, I'm doing the best that I can, and you'll need a shoulder to lean on. It's good to have a mentor, even outside of the system that you teach for. It's good to forever have your instrument, but it's also good to remember that, you know, the ultimate thing about teaching music is you want people to fall in love with it and to stay in love with it, even if they don't play anymore. And if by chance you've done your job halfway decent, you'll get a new generation of music educators that'll come behind you and say, you were that one that did that thing for them. You know, you have your physical children, but you have your instrumental children too. And when that legacy starts reproducing, and you can say, hey, you know what? I had something to do with that. And I saw that thing at the beginning in you. So I tell my students, you know, even on the elementary level, I am here because I'm looking for my replacement.
I love that. I love that. First off, these are entire books of what you guys are throwing out is knowledge that people can use for a lifetime. This is what my grandmother would call meat. This is not, you know, this is meat to give out. Jen, I think you're the rounding it up.
I think there have been many times in my life when I have thought back to college and I have thought, what I learned then was important, but it really was nothing compared to what I learned the first time I walked into a classroom. So I think that teachers need to be prepared for that, knowing that, you know, most of what you learn being a teacher is your first like 5-6 years of teaching, right? And I think that it's really, really important for you to, if you're a teacher of anything, you need to be able to sort of spend time thinking about yourself and delving deeply into yourself and any kind of like implicit biases you hold in your life. You need to find ways to be around people who come from different situations than you, people who look different than you. Yeah. You need to also know your community. And if your community does look a lot different from you, or is you know, a community that you're not used to living in yourself, you need to find ways to immerse yourself in that community. And because those are the ways that you create relationships with kids, and that might take you out of your comfort zone, but the sooner you do that, you know, as a young teacher, the better your experience is going to be. We learn about, you know, teacher burnout. And I think that the relationships that we make with our kids go both ways. So if you're not making those relationships, it's easy to burn out because you don't feel like you've got that community in your school as well. So creating, but it does take work a lot of times to sort of look into yourself. and I think that's really important. And yeah.
I jotted down some notes while you guys were talking. I have here this idea of staying curious, right? Continuing to learn, stay artsy, keep in the music, stay musical, and stay reflective, stay humble. What beautiful, I mean, literally that's eat, pray, love, but for teachers. And just beautiful statements that have deep weight and can be really powerful in terms of creating some joy, sparking joy, sparking creativity as we create this, you know, this long-term career around educating kids, transforming kids, empowering kids, connecting with communities, building superpowers. and all of those wonderful things that the work that you do through music as a tool. Wow, we're
Yeah, this
We've
is
learned so much, Quanies.
this is amazing, amazing. And so thank you all for joining us for this session with music educators celebrating National Arts and Education Week. Let's give it up to our music teachers. Woo!
Oh.
We love our arts educators. Awesome. So we have 2 more days left of our panels. Tomorrow we have theater arts educators, and then Friday we have visual arts educators. So please, please, please come back tomorrow, same time, same place, 5:30. Thank you to all of our arts educators who are doing phenomenal work right now and forever, because they've been doing phenomenal work before any of this happened. So thank you, thank you, thank you. We love you, and see you tomorrow, same time, same place. Bye.